Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today in another Thursday webinar. My name is Curtis. I'm one of the trainers here. And today our topic is another Redtail essential, this time on automations. And so to first start off, I want to talk about what automations actually are. And it's essentially like you get to create trigger events in your system that will automatically make other actions happen in the system. So a lot of it is, think of it like an if-this statement. So if this, then that. Anytime I do something like change an item in like the status, maybe add a contact, I have the ability to create different reactions, so that way I don't have to always remember to do those actions later on. To build off on that, the actions and the reactions that we have are set to be inside the database. So keep in mind, these actions are things that you physically have to do inside the database. So in the left-hand column here, we have things like our actions. So anytime you add an address or change an address, same thing goes for a phone number or an email address, anytime you add or change one of those. We also have the option to, anytime we add a contact, an activity, or add an account, have that be the action that starts off our automation. And then also, you'll see the last item down there is anytime I change a name of a contact or a status are also available actions for our automations. Over to the right-hand side, you're going to see that we have reactions. Now, right now, there's only set to 5 different reactions, and they're either email a user or email a team. If you can also link a workflow or set a field or set permissions for certain items. And again, that's based off of an action that happens. And to build further on that, I do want to talk about, think of like when you're setting up dominoes. So if you set up a whole line of dominoes, that's sort of setting up the actual automation itself. You know, there's a whole process involved of things I need to do in a specific order. Now, those dominoes aren't always going to fall over on their own automatically. Okay, so it has to be something that you do, like for instance, knock over the first domino. That first domino is what the automation is. That's what that trigger event is. So the action item is the first domino. If I add an address, if I change an address, I'm knocking over that domino. So it then starts the reaction, and then I have all those items start of what I need. Now, again, automations are optional. You don't necessarily need to use them, but they can really enhance your business or actually enhance your Redtail. So that way, again, you don't have to remember to do everything every single time. And a few examples of what we're going to be building today is going to be, the first one is anytime we add a contact record. So that first one there, I want it to set a permission. Okay, so again, that's one option. I can add a contact record and I can set permissions because maybe in my database, I want to make sure that I'm permissioning all the contacts to the appropriate people so that they're only visible by those people. The second one is we're going to talk about a change status. And anytime I change a status, I want it to actually email a user or a team. A great example of that is if I anytime change a status to inactive, and I want to notify a team of users that this contact record is active, I don't have to actually go over and tell them. I can have an email sent automatically. So that way it goes over. I don't have to remember. All I had to do was just change the status of the contact record and the system did it for me. And the third one we're going to talk about is adding an activity that will automatically start a workflow. This is probably one of the most common automations I've seen because workflows are a huge process as well. We also did a Redtail Essential Workflows video. I will definitely point out where you can find that information. But if I want that workflow to start because of adding an activity, for instance, anytime I schedule an activity for a client review, I want that workflow to automatically start, and especially if it's a client review workflow. And so along the way, you're going to, and actually, let's actually dive into the system. We're going to talk about these first before we talk about actually building them out further. So those 3 automations are going to be set up as templates. Anytime you want to build a template in the CRM, I'm going to go up to my name in the top right-hand corner, and I'm going to choose Manage Your Account. Once you're on Manage Your Account, I'm going to come down to the section that says Manage Templates, and I'm going to click Automation Templates. Once you're here, and if this page is blank, that's perfectly okay. It just means there are no automations set up in your database. But to create a brand new one, you're going to go to the top right-hand corner and click on the blue Add button. Once you select that, you're going to see the options to actually build out your template. Now, up at the top, you'll see on this event, do this action, if all conditions true, if any conditions true. We're going to work our way down these items as we set up these templates. But the first thing we need to do is actually set the name of the template. And so back over here in these examples, first one we're going to do is anytime we add a contact, I want to set the permission. Now I'm going to make it a little more specific because maybe in our database, we have multiple advisors and I want, if it's like our advisor Tucker's clients, I want it to set the permission to his team. If it's maybe another advisor's contacts, I want it to set the permission to their team. We're going to narrow it down to just one advisor right now. So to do that, we're actually going to name it specifically for Tucker. So we're going to say, you know, Tucker's clients set permissions. And you can name these however you want. I suggest naming it so you know exactly what it's for. And this is saying for Tucker's clients, we're going to set permissions. Now, the action item is controlled right here where it says trigger event. When I choose this dropdown, you're going to see a list of items. You'll also notice there's two on the list that we have if you use these integrations. So we do have an option for MoneyGuide Pro. If you ever send a contact record to MoneyGuide Pro, that can be a trigger of an automation. Or we also have open an account with Orion. So if you use either of those two integrations, you can actually build automations off of those as well. But again, for this instance, I'm going to choose contact added. Because in this case, anytime I add a contact record, I want to set the permission so it automatically assigns it to the appropriate advisor. So once I select the trigger event, I'm then going to go up to the top and choose do this action. This gives me the ability to choose what kind of reaction I want to happen. And you'll notice right now there's 3 drop downs, but I'm first going to focus on the first one. And it gives me the options again of either email a user or a team, link a workflow, set a field, or set permissions. Now again, I'm going to choose to set permissions, so I'm going to choose that option. And then the next drop down says, well, do I want to set it to a specific user or do I want to set it to a specific team? Now, in this case, I want to permission the user, or sorry, I want to permission the contact record that's being added to be automatically assigned to the team of Tucker. And so I already have a team built out called Tucker's team, and I'm going to select that. So again, taking a step back on the event of adding a contact record, I'm going to do the action of set permissions to the team of Tucker's team. Next, we have these items that are called if all conditions and if any conditions. What these are to be very specific. So I don't necessarily want every single contact record to be assigned to Tucker's team. I only want Tucker's contacts to be assigned to him. And so with that, in this next slide, I want to talk about the difference between those different types of conditions. For an if all condition, this is normally when you have multiple fields that are all different. So for instance, I can narrow it down specifically to any contact with a certain status and maybe any contact with a certain servicing advisor. Now, the if all conditions mean every time I add a condition in line, every single one of them has to be true. And it's really important to make sure that these triggers do not conflict with each other. And what I mean by that is one contact cannot be both a status of inactive and active at the same time. So if I were to add 2 conditions, both for status, it would be impossible because a contact record cannot be 2 different statuses at the same time. If you do need to put an either or in regards to the same field, that's when you get to use the if any conditions, because this is where you can do the same field with different values over and over again because only one of those items has to be true. So again, for if all conditions, all items that are selected under that on that tab have to be true about the contact record. Under the if any section, only one of the items selected has to be true. So you'll notice I have either active, the status equal to active, or the status equal to prospect. And that's very important because a contact can either be an active or a prospect. But over to the left-hand side, I can narrow it down to, I want the status to be active and then change the field, and then category is going to be equal to AAA. Now there's a lot of different items and how the conditions work. But on top of that, I want to suggest you want to keep these conditions as limited as possible. That's going to help with consistency later on. Now, when building out these conditions, you'll see that you'll have a drop-down menu for all of them. So every time I add a condition, I can choose what the condition item is going to be. It's going to be about the contact status, and then whether it's equal to or not equal to a specific value. And the drop-downs look the same. It'll say add all condition, or it'll say add any condition. And again, add all means it's going to be multiple items where all of them have to be true. Add any means can be multiple items and only one has to be true. So to build further on that, we're going to go back to our template. And so in this case, I only want to set the permission if the contact servicing advisor is equal to Tucker. So in that case, I have it selected on the tab of if all conditions true. I can hit new condition on the right-hand side. And here's this dropdown. You'll see here's the different items that I can narrow it down to, either by the type, status, category source, or even the servicing or writing advisor. In this case, I'm going to narrow it down to I need the servicing advisor to be equal to, and then I can choose from this list, I can say Tucker. And right away, I can hit add condition. Now, again, I can add multiple conditions just by going up here to the top and hit add condition again. Maybe in this case, I also want to narrow it down to a specific source or status or category, but maybe I want to narrow it down to different statuses, so multiple statuses at the same time. What I mean by that is if I come over to the right-hand side and choose if any conditions, I can add multiple items about the status, because if it's Tucker's client, maybe I only want to permission active clients and prospects, and those are both statuses. That's when I can come in and say, okay, also, the status has to be equal to active client, or the status, adding another condition, has to be equal to a prospect. Now, again, coming back, what this automation is saying is anytime I add a contact record, it's going to set the permission to Tucker's team if the contact servicing advisor is equal to Tucker and either the contact status is active or prospect. Now, again, I would strongly suggest that you keep these conditions as limited as possible, because maybe I don't want to narrow it down to just these two statuses, and that's definitely fine. In that case, I'm just going to remove them both, and I'm going to say the only condition I need and that I want to worry about is the contact servicing advisor equal to Tucker. Any contact who has a servicing advisor selected when being added is going to be automatically permissioned over to Tucker's team. And so I'm going to create that automation, and we're actually going to demonstrate that. So you'll see right here, Tucker's client set permission is open and active. If I need to add a contact record, what I'm going to do is hit the plus sign in the top right and then choose contacts. And from here, I'm going to add an individual contact. And right away, what I'm going to do, I'll just, let's see, I'm going to add myself. So we're going to say Kurt Ware, and I'm going to scroll down. And I'm just going to add a very basic contact. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say maybe I'm adding them as a prospect, but the most important item is making sure that I'm consistent with choosing the servicing advisor. So I'm going to come over here and choose Tucker McLaughlin. As long as I'm choosing that, it's going to automatically set the permission. And so if I come down here and I hit Save Contact, it creates the contact record automatically. And if I come over to the left and I click on More, I can scroll down to the permission/roles section, and you'll see it automatically permissioned to the team of Tucker. And so that's how the automation works. I added the contact record. I specifically chose servicing advisor when adding that contact, and then the team automatically set the permission, so only the people on Tucker's team can now view this contact record. All right, let's go back and let's add two more automations. The next one that we were going to talk about, let me go back here, was going to be in regards to changing a status. So anytime I change a status of a contact, I want to email a user or a team. One example for this is maybe anytime I change a status to inactive or deceased, I want to notify the users that that was actually sent. And so to do that, I'm going to go to my name in the top right, choose Manage Your Account, and then back to our automation templates. From here, I'm going to choose Add one more time. And this time, we're going to say, we'll do Notify Team. We'll call it Tucker's team. So again, this is going to be based off of, changing a status. And you can even add into the description here and say, anytime we change status to inactive, or we're going to do deceased. Let me spell things correctly here. It will notify users. Perfect. Okay. And again, you don't have to put a description, but this will help out just so you know exactly what this is for. Now, in this case, the trigger event is going to be contact status changed. So I can select it right there. So contact status changed. Up at the top, I'm going to choose do this action. And again, this time you'll notice that I don't have a set permissions. And that's actually important to point out is the actual action items will change depending on what your trigger event is. Now, the status change cannot automatically set a permission for a contact. But what it can do is it can email a user or a team, it can link a workflow, or even set another field for the contact record. In this case, what I want to do is I want to email the team that a status was changed. So same thing, I'm going to choose Tucker's team, and they're the ones who are going to get the email. And now I need to be specific for what needs to be true about that contact record in order for Tucker's team to get that email. In this case, I want to still make sure that the contact record has the servicing advisor equal to Tucker. If it's for another advisor's clients, I don't want them to get the notification. I only want Tucker's team to get the notification. So in this case, again, I'm going to hit new condition, and I'm going to choose this time again, servicing advisor is going to be equal to, and we're going to choose Tucker. And now is where I get to take advantage of the if any conditions. So coming over to the right, I can choose if any conditions because one of two statuses needs to be true in order for this to activate. So again, it's going to be either inactive or deceased. And so if I hit new condition, I can come over here and I'm going to choose contact status is going to be equal to active. And then a second one, because we're doing status again, I'm going to choose contact status equal to deceased. Now again, this is anytime I change a status and that status is going to be equal to not active, that needs to be inactive. Let me add that one more time. Contact status equal to inactive, got to be specific here. So again, anytime I change a status and that status is either deceased or inactive client, it's going to email the team of Tucker. Okay. And again, also the other condition is if the servicing advisor is equal to Tucker. So right away, I can hit create automation. And now to give an example of this, I'm going to go back. Let's actually go over to, we'll go to Tim Taylor's record. If at any point Tim leaves and I need to now mark his status as inactive, all I have to do is come over here and hit edit. And then I can just change the status to inactive. There we go, and update. As soon as I do that, an automation just triggered, and then it sent an email to the team of Tucker's team. And again, it's very important because he has to have the servicing advisor of Tucker. Now, in this case, you'll notice that it's Tucker and Rick. And so actually, in this case, he did not get the email. But if this were actually set as Tucker's servicing advisor at the time, he would have gotten the email. As an example, I do want to show you what that email looks like. So coming over here, you'll get an email that has this box, and it's going to say Timothy Taylor's status was changed to, and then whatever it was changed to, and then below that tells you why. Based off of the trigger event and these conditions, this is what the contact status is now. So again, this is what the email looks like when any of those automations send over emails, is just telling you this contact was changed because of this automation, and gives you a little bit of information there, which is really helpful. Okay, so again, it's very important to stay consistent. Now in this case, right over here, because I had it wrong and he wasn't listed as Tucker's client, what I want to do is actually come back over to manage your account. I'm going to go to automation templates, and then I'm going to go back to, we'll go notify team. And in this case, because it needs to be a second servicing advisor, I'm going to move both of these items over to the if any conditions as well. Okay, so again, this was too specific because it can't only be equal to Tucker, it can also be equal to Tucker and Rick. So you can move this condition over to the if any, and then it'll continue to work properly for you at that point on. All right, now the last automation that I want to talk about as an example is going to be anytime I add an activity, I want it to start a workflow. I absolutely love this one. And again, this one is used probably more often than any other automations because a lot of the times I have a process, a workflow process that's going to tell me to do things before, during, and after an actual client meeting or client review that I don't want to forget to start. Without an automation, I would actually have to go and create the activity on the calendar and then also come back and choose maybe the quick add and add the workflow manually. This gives me the ability to only add the activity and the workflow will start automatically for me. And I love that option. So we're going to choose add one more time. This time we're going to say, client review. Now this one I'm not going to make specific to be about Tucker. This is anytime I create an activity for a client review, I want it to automatically start my client review process. So here again, the trigger event, I'm going to choose activity added. So anytime I add an activity, I'm going to do this action. I'm going to specifically choose link workflow from template. And I already have workflow templates set up. And again, if you don't use workflow templates, we definitely do have a Redtail Essentials workflows and also a workflow series that we did, the 4-part series that I would suggest checking out and how to build those. In this case, I want to actually start our client review workflow. Okay, so again, on the event of an activity added, I'm going to link the workflow, client review workflow. But again, I don't want this automation to trigger the client review every time an activity is added. I want it to trigger every time a very specific activity is added. And so that's why I have conditions. So if I choose if all conditions, I'm going to come over here and choose new condition. And in this case, you'll see I have items for activities instead of contacts now. And again, because I'm adding an activity, my conditions are going to be based off of the activity. And so here, I'm going to choose activity type and equal to, and I'm going to choose specifically client review. Now, keep in mind, if you happen to have client review as a category instead, that's definitely fine. You can always choose the activity category. It all depends on how you have it set up in your database. But in this instance, I'm only worrying about adding an activity for the client review. I'm going to add that condition. So again, on the event of an activity added, I'm going to do the action of link workflow from template, specifically the client review workflow, if the activity type is equal to client review. I'm going to create that automation. And now let's actually show you how that works. So I'm going to go back. Let's go back to Tim's record. What we're going to do is, I already see he has 4 active workflows. So let's actually go to someone else who doesn't have any workflows. We'll go to the new contact record that we created here. Now, he already had one going. I do apologize. I'm going to clean this up. This is the whole don't look at the man behind the curtain situation. So in the event that you have a contact record and you create the activity for the client review, starting from the contact, I can choose the quick add in the top, and I'm going to choose activities. Right from here, I'm going to say, we'll call this client review, and we're going to schedule the date. I'm going to say this is going to be maybe on the 8th that we're scheduling it for, 10 o'clock. Now, the most important part, again, is making sure that you're selecting your condition. So I'm going to choose the type is going to be equal to client review. If I add this activity and I don't choose the correct type at the time, it is not going to trigger the automation. And that's really important to state. Again, the condition, the trigger event is activity added, not activity updated. So you want to stay consistent with how you're creating your activities so it triggers your events properly. So in this case, all I have to do is just choose the type and hit create activity. And what happens is you'll see it's going to, on my past due, the activity was created. Then right up here, active workflows, I have 1. If I click on it, you're going to see that the client review workflow automatically started because I added that activity. On top of that, this is one place that you can actually see that the automation happened. If I go into the activity that I created, so from the main contact record, I click on that activity and open it up, you'll see this yellow bar. It says this activity is linked to Client Review Workflow 2020 via an automation. So I know that this activity actually started a workflow, and I love that because this is really beneficial. I know that I scheduled the activity, and if I go to the workflow, I'm going to know what needs to be done before, during, and after that workflow to make sure that it happens properly every single time in the same way, always. And again, automations are about consistency. I just have to make sure that I'm being as simple as possible, creating those automations, creating my activities, my contacts the same way, so that way everything else automates for me.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.